right, let's go ahead and get started. Good morning, everyone. This is Natalie Runyon, and I am so excited on behalf of the Legal Executive Institute's Transforming Women's Leadership in the Law Initiative to be co-hosting this webinar in collaboration with She Breaks the Law. Helen from She Breaks the Law will be introducing Sheila in just a couple of moments. I wanted to mention a couple of housekeeping items before we get started. So number one, this webinar will be recorded, and so you should know that, and we will be sending the recording around to all those that registered right after the webinar as soon as the recording becomes available. You can submit questions during this webinar in the Q&A panel, which you can find on the right-hand side of the screen. And then finally, because we're all in this new normal, you may see the face of a child in the background. You may actually hear some voices. So we're just going to keep on rolling. And so thank you for being here today, and really excited to welcome back Sheila for our second webinar on the art of asking questions to influence. And this was the second webinar, a part of a series in collaboration that Transforming Women's Leadership started with She Breaks the Law. And you can check out the recording of the first webinar, which was focused on change-making tactics for strategic relationship building, by going to www.tr.com/TWL. And that will take you to a webpage for Transforming Women's Leadership, and you can access the article that has the recording in it by its title, Change-Making Tactics for Strategic Relationship Building. So now I'm going to hand it over to Helen from She Breaks the Law to have her share a little bit more about the organization and then introduce Sheila. Thank you.
Hello, everyone. Thanks very much, Natalie. Hello, everyone. You are probably 100% going to hear both my children in the background. We're currently parenting them with Disney, so anything could happen during this call. Thank you very much, Natalie and Thomson, Reuters, and the Legal Executive Institute and their Transforming Women's Leadership in Law initiative for partnering with us on the second in this She Develops series. To anyone that's joining us live right now, to any lawbreakers that have dialed in, I don't know what to say, because I know how hard it is at the moment to find any headspace to do things. So if you are joining live for this, thank you so much. And I really hope you enjoy this moment of connecting and being together and learning. Some of you may be watching this on record as well. So if you are watching this on playback, thank you again for finding the time to listen to Sheila's great content. I'm just going to pass straight over to Sheila now. She's an expert career coach. She ran our last She Develops webinar on strategic relationship building, which was brilliant. And today she's going to be talking about the art of asking questions to influence and how to say no, which personally I definitely need help with. And I think we'll be doing some tweeting as well. If you want to follow the tweets, Samina is doing some great live tweeting. So without further ado, I shall pass over to you, Sheila. Thank you.
Thank you, ladies, and hello, everyone, no matter what time of day or evening it is where you are. I wanted to talk about, first, the importance of communication during this time. Communications is a critical skill no matter what time you're living in, but right now with the coronavirus and everyone being isolated and being pulled in 90 million directions, as Helen and Natalie said, people have children at home. They're being tugged. Their dogs are coming in. People are stressed about where their retirement money is. They're being pulled in 1,000 different ways that we had not imagined a few days ago or a few weeks ago. A few days ago, unfortunately, we did imagine it. The other thing that people are experiencing for the first time, a lot of our folks, is how to communicate remotely and how to listen differently because of that. So as we are going through this program, I'm going to sort of highlight the skills and things you might need to be doing a little bit differently in this new virtual reality, which includes a lot of patience and understanding and empathy. Now, can you go to the next slide?
Sheila, I think you have control because my system's slow.
Okay. Oh, I do. It's nice to have control. Okay, so we're going to go to the next slide after this, featuring me. So with regard to the agenda for today, as we mentioned, we're going to talk about the art of listening, which is really critical in this day that we're living, as well as the language of business, how to influence, how to use powerful questions to get the results that you want, the problem with saying no, and then how to say no when you need to, because unfortunately in the legal field, saying no is a necessity at certain points, and then how we tailor communications. So the benefits of listening are many. You understand the objectives, you understand the other person's point of view, and people feel heard. Because we are so distant today, and there are a lot of competing factors going on, it's really critical that you understand the other person's point of view and where they want to go. And often we think that we do, but when we don't listen, and ask questions, we don't. So you need to sort of confirm the understanding of the objective and why that person has that viewpoint. This is important for a number of reasons because people need to feel heard, especially when we're having this distance between us. People need to feel that they are part of a team and that their viewpoint is being listened to. The other thing about understanding the other person's point of view and what their true objectives are, because a lot of times people say their objectives are one thing and they're actually another. For example, I worked with a business where they said that they were hesitant to put in a new compliance procedure. And that was shocking to me because I knew the executives very well and they were compliance champions. And so when you dug under the covers, you found out it wasn't the compliance initiative that they objected to. They had concerns about what this was going to do with them in the marketplace compared to competitors. So now that you understood the objective was they wanted to sort of be able to benchmark and not be at a competitive disadvantage, you could then tailor the objective, the compliance initiative, to better meet their objectives so that it didn't impact on the business as much. And also by listening and telling people that you are listening to them, they remain more open to what might be being said. They contribute to the conversation. Now in charge, so I have to remember that. So the founding skills for influencing are, as we talked about, listening and understanding the language, business understanding and language. And I'm going to talk about how business language actually has a stronger impact on women than on men as part of this. So with regard to the art of listening, I want you all to remember the acronym WAIT. Why am I talking? If you are in a conversation and you feel that you are talking too much, and I know some people actually put on their computer a sticky pad, WAIT. Why am I talking? You should be listening more than you are speaking. If you are talking too much, it sends some of the wrong signals to your audience, which are some of the signals I have underneath WAIT. I'm more important than you. I'm clearly more interesting than you. I don't care what you think, and I don't have time for your opinion. And this is a contest, and I'm going to win. And we're going to talk about that idea of winning a little bit later on. You also want to be attentive as to what the person is saying. So one thing that I did once, and I wasn't really cognizant of it, someone came in my office, and she had a problem. And what I did was I intuitively turned my computer away so I couldn't see the emails, the IM messages, and I just focused on her. And even just that act of moving the computer said to the other person that you are what I want to focus on. And I didn't even realize that I had done it. The person pointed it out to me later, how that made them feel important and heard, and that I wanted to be part of the conversation with them. And again, you want to focus on the speaker, the objectives, and the context. And context, again, today is more important than ever because people are in a hurry. They're being pulled. They're doing homeschooling. They're doing their work. They have other concerns about the business beyond their day job. So understand the context and take the time to listen. I want you also to be open-minded. One thing that I learned as a leader, and it took me a while because I thought I was just fabulous in the beginning, is to be open-minded. I found out when I did this that I wasn't as smart as I thought I was. I led the Women's Initiative for a number of years, and some of the best ideas came from the people below me who worked on the initiative as to how they could benefit. And I got to say, my reaction to some of the ideas initially was, oh, that's never going to work. And I have to say, whenever I did that, it turned out to be the biggest success that the initiative engaged in. So when you're having these types of conversations, you have to be open-minded, and you have to realize that other people have great ideas and different viewpoints that can benefit the organization. And that's why we want diverse teams and different points of view, because together we are stronger than we are alone. You want to make sure you're also asking neutral, open-ended questions. So that means you don't want to sort of say, well, this is ridiculous, but tell me how this can benefit us. You want to make sure that you're not putting any judgment into the questions that you're asking, and that they're how and what questions generally, so that you evoke more of that person's thinking. This isn't, for those of you who are litigators, a cross-examination. This is sort of an information-seeking device. You want to provide feedback and empathy, especially during this time where people are stretched. You want to be able to say, I understand that this is your point of view, or that you feel this way. And this way, again, they feel heard and they're part of the conversation. And the other interesting thing about that is, by saying that you understand somebody's objectives, it tells them that you are working with them. For example, I've been talking to one woman who has had some difficulties because she has young children at home during this time. And when there are emergency assignments, it's much harder for her to do those types of assignments than it is for her to work on a sort of a long-term project. And so we talked about how to have that conversation with a person who has a stay-at-home partner, so the children aspect doesn't impact his life at all. And to say sort of like, I understand that our clients have a lot of needs right now, and and as this is a stressful time for the legal profession, we want to meet our clients' needs. However, I'm, given my personal circumstances, am better fitted for the long-term projects, and I will take on as many of those as you need me to. But when something has a quick turnaround time and I can't be sure that my 17-month-old or 18-month-old is going to be napping, that would be better for all of us, because that way I meet your expectations and we keep the clients happy. And it's to try to have that type of conversation. I also want you to look at the body language. And now this is an interesting time because we're on the phone or we're on Zoom, where we're sort of more from here up, so we may not be seeing all of the body language. But you actually see more than you think in that. And the other part of the language that you can hear is the voice, and where the voice is. There's a lightness to people's voice when they are engaged. There's an excitement. And when they are not, they are flat, and you are not getting the same enthusiasm. And as for some of us who may be married, we may use that term now and then, that's fine. And we all know that doesn't mean that's fine. So you want to be listening for those same sorts of changes in voice patterns when you're talking to someone. Does someone goes from being enthusiastic about a project to not being? And then you want to dig in with questions as to what might be causing that change. And silence is also a powerful indicator that something is off or changed. And you need to address and ask about that silence. Again, especially when we're doing this telecommunications phase of our lives, you have to talk about the silence more, because it's not like you can sort of go into someone's office and bump into them. You may not want to do it if it's a large conference call on the call, depending on the politics. You may want to do a separate call afterwards. But you do want to address the silence so you understand what is in it, so you can figure out how you can influence that decision. And be aware of what's not being said. If people are talking about one aspect of a project and not another, that might be a problem. So you need to understand what people aren't saying also. And finally, make sure you're reacting to the message, not to the person. You want to try to have this, it's about business. It's the Godfather. It's business, not personal. And that's how you want it to be when you're talking to people. You want it to be that you disagree with their message. You disagree, you're coming out to a different point of view, but you don't want to be attacking the person. So one thing that helps you in strategic communications and influencing others through questions is to be viewed as an expert and to have credibility. And so how do you do this in this context? And we're talking, things that you want to have credibility. People have to know that you understand the business, that you're an expert, you're a trusted advisor, you're a thought leader. You know not just about this organization, but you know what's going on in the industry. You're a person who goes out and does benchmarking, and you're solutions oriented. When you have that reputation or brand, it makes it a lot easier to influence people. So how do you do this? You read the financials and the press releases. You listen to investor calls if you're inside. And also, if you're outside and your clients, you have important clients, you should be listening to their calls and understanding what is impacting them. You want to spot mentor with people who are on the business side. And spot mentoring, to me, is not like a lengthy mentoring relationship, but where you say to someone, do you have a half hour for a virtual cup of coffee? I need to understand the company's goals and objectives, where the finances are, so I can better provide value to you. I need to understand how you're feeling about the technology that we're using in this virtual environment and what I should be doing to plan for next year. And then you understand the real objectives. As I said, you dig under the covers to understand what is really driving decisions. In a perfect world, you'll find a way to sit at the leadership table. Depending on your organization, that may or may not be happen. But you want to also know your industry and competitors. So one way that you demonstrate this is and making sure that you have listened correctly, is you summarize what you've heard and you repeat it back to people, and you get them to agree that that is what their viewpoint is and that is how they are approaching a problem. And again, given our environment today, this is a critical skill, because you're not in the office. You can't peek your head in and say 2 minutes later, oh, by the way, I just want to make sure I have this right. You have to take advantage of the opportunity, because people's time is stretched beyond belief. They don't have the ability it's not easy to get a hold of them as it was when they were down in the office. You want to use the business language that we talked about. Susan Caliandro, who I think is absolutely fabulous, wrote a book called The Missing 33%, and she also, I think, has a TED Talk or a TED-like talk online, and she is remarkable. And what she realized in her studies is what often happens to women is not that they lack leadership skills, but they're not perceived as having them because they don't speak the language of business. And some of this is going to sound silly, but by using those terms, you gain credibility within an organization. So you want to demonstrate that you have business, strategic, and financial acumen. So how is this different when you're having an an influential conversation, is rather than saying, I think the business would benefit by enhancing its compliance program, you would say, I believe that the business could increase customer satisfaction which is one of our major objectives, by putting in place an enhanced compliance procedure. In other organizations, when they've done it, they've seen a 50% return on investment. The other thing that I would point out from a financial perspective is those organizations that have put in these types of compliance procedures, they've seen a 20% drop in payments to the regulators. And that has been they've been able to take those monies and reinvest it in growing the business. The difference is it's telling the business that you understand their objectives, you know where they're going, and it makes, because I think you're all leaders anyway, but for stereotypes and unconscious bias, it helps elevate where you're going. So when you are in these conversations, think about how you can tie the points that you're trying to make to business, strategic, and financial acumen and objectives. If you have a chance, again, I would recommend Susan's book, because she also talks a lot about how mentoring of women could be better in terms of this. So overall, when we're looking at how to influence people, you want to establish credibility, and you want to, if possible, have a strong relationship. We've talked about that in the last webinar. You want to know what a win is for you, and what is important. A lot of times people go into these discussions wanting to win every point, that this is a battle. They got beat up on the playground as a child and they're not giving an inch. Understand what is a win. Sometimes a win is just being able to look at a project. Sometimes a win is getting 50% of the funding. Understand what it is for you that is a win, and pick your battles strategically. Don't fight over things that don't matter. You also want to understand the dynamics of the circles that you are trying to influence. In particular, you want to know the people who you are trying to influence, what are their approaches, their priorities, and their concerns. So if you have a CFO and you have a chief marketing officer who are people that you want to influence, the CFO may deal better with metrics and numbers. The marketing officer may like stories and, about how other organizations have benefited for it. Understand what moves the person, understand what that person's objectives are for the year, and understand what may concern them in terms of, whether or not a project should move forward. Now, some of this, depending on your organization, you may want to consider doing some pre-meetings and meeting with each of the key people ahead of a large meeting where they'll all be together, so that before you walk into the room, you understand their perspectives, and when you do your final presentation, you can address it. The other key thing is to know who influences who. If two people are very close, who are going to be in the decision-making body, and sometimes people who are not on the decision-making body, can you use somebody to influence another person's perspective? There was one person I knew was very close to the management team, and I knew while she didn't sit on the management team, that two of the people on the management team relied on her strategic thinking and approach, and that they were going to speak to her before they went in that room. I made sure I had many conversations with her, and that any concerns that she had were addressed. So it's understanding who may also be able to influence who's not in the room. And also you want to understand, if possible, the individual group dynamics. We had a CEO at one time that I was dealing with who was a very strong personality. And in his group meetings with his direct reports, he made big, bold statements, and that was what he thought was going to happen, and he was done. But if you got him after that meeting one-on-one, you could move him. But you had to understand how he felt when he was in front of the group and how he could be after the meeting was, and how you could move him and where you could move him. And the other thing that we're going to talk about more is how you ask what I call our powerful questions that open up other possibilities and views for people. So people who are shut down, how do you bring them to a different reality or a different vision? And then you want to have your position mastered. I know this goes without saying. You want to make sure that you can answer any questions, concerns, that you present realistic data and information, and that you're focused on the greater good. This isn't about you increasing your turf or a turf war. This is about what's good for the client, the organization, and you need to be able to demonstrate it. If it comes off that this is about you, you will be unsuccessful. Now that when you put in all these things together, you want to create a plan of how you're going to influence people. It doesn't have to be written down. It can be bullet points, but you want to have an idea of how you're going to push your program forward. And the other thing that I would note is now and then, if this is a program that has been rejected in the past, you want to stay focused on this decision and not to rehash what has happened in the past. If you've been unsuccessful before with people, you don't want to go back into that time period. You want to stay focused on the present and how it can benefit the organization. So why powerful questions? They gather information. By doing them in the correct way that we talked about, it demonstrates business and objective understanding, and it opens up possible solutions, and it limits the use of the word no. So I want to give you some examples of powerful questions. Well, this could be an exciting new venture. What do you think the regulators' view of this will be? Okay, so with the first part of this question, this could be an exciting new venture. You are showing that you are buying into the fact of the possibility of this new venture creating new business, helping us meet our objectives. By asking them, what do you think the regulators' view of this will be? You're having them do the thinking behind it, so they don't feel like they're being told, oh, this could be a problem with the regulators, yada, yada, yada. Instead, they are going to give you your opinion, and they're going to start to critically think through this issue that you wanted to raise. This allows you to get buy-in and have people come to your point of view without even saying it often. Another way of saying this is the second example. I understand that the coronavirus adversely impacted income. What are the risks of reducing compliance spend, and how can we mitigate them? You understand the objective and the problem. You've said it. You've linked it to a business and financial objective. And then you've opened up the discussion as to what are the risks? What do they see as the risks as the business people? And how can we mitigate it? So all of a sudden, it's not you telling them that we have to do this. It's you guys working together. We're using the word we. We're talking about how we get to the next place together. And that this isn't, legal or ops or someone else versus the rest of the organization. This is us as an organization working towards a solution. The last 40, the next example, the last 40 days revealed some technology and business operations opportunities. What do you see as our pain points and our greatest opportunities? So again, if you're on the ops side, the legal ops side, rather than coming in and working alone and coming with this is what, as based on Corona, this is what we need to do. You're getting input from the beginning from the stakeholders. It allows you to understand what, from the user's point of view, they see as the issues, and you're bringing them into the solution. And when you have people as part of the process, you get greater engagement and buy-in. Now, I understand that this will increase sometimes the time period that you could sit down on your computer today while you're not homeschooling, and you could type out a beautiful 10-page white paper on what you think the organization needs to do. And by having to talk to people, this may prolong the process, but I would say I believe that it actually shortens it, because you will have people talking to you, and when they read it, they know that they've had input and that you've sought out the input of other people, and you will end up with less pushback. And the other ones are some other open-ended questions. You'll notice that a lot of them are how and what questions, and the answers are never like no or yes. That's the key of a powerful question. You want to evoke responses from the people that make them think about how the organization is looking at issues. Okay, so right now, to break this up a little bit, Natalie has graciously agreed to do a demonstration with me on some of the things that we've been talking about. So hopefully you'll all listen. Ginger has been advocating for an AI project. She's met with tremendous resistance from the managing partner and chief operating officer. Ginger has done due diligence and learned if she can move the COO, the MP will likely agree. She has a meeting with the COO to convince her to move her position. We're going to listen in. Now, I want you to realize that she's already sort of looked at the circles of influence, and so she knows that while the MP, she could meet with both of them, meeting with the COO first is probably a smart strategic move, because she's a very smart person. And I'm going to play her because she's a very smart person. So, thank you for agreeing to meet with me today on the AI project. You know, I'm really excited about the possibilities of what AI could mean to our organization, but I understand that you may have some concerns about the project going forward, and I'd really like to understand those better.
Yeah, well, I do have a number of concerns. You know, as you know, for years, I've been advocating for a new matter management system, and we are finally getting the chance to execute on that. I'm not sure we have the money or the human resources to dedicate to both projects. So that's kind of my first concern. My second is it's unclear to me what the return on investment is on this project, and I think we need clarity on that. You know, number three, we make money by billing client for hours, not getting done work faster. So how do we think about recouping the money that we could potentially lose on the more efficient workflow? In addition, in thinking about our people, like how does it impact our talent development? We need to be thinking through some implications there. And finally, you know, clients come to us because we have the best legal minds in the country. So what faith do we have that the AI results can produce the same outcome?
Wow, you've really thought this through, and I appreciate the time that you have taken to raise these concerns, because I think you're probably not alone in the concerns that you've raised. I want to make sure that, though, I understand each of the concerns and how you're viewing them. So you viewed the idea that with the new matter management program coming out, that this could be a drain on both human and financial resources. Would that be correct?
Yeah, because, you know, as you know, we have a very lean, you know, technology team and project management team to work on these, you know, improvement projects. So that is a top concern.
So how would you feel, you know, my concern is that in the strategic realm that we find ourselves, a lot of our competitors are moving towards AI, and I don't want us to fall behind the wayside. So what I was thinking about is how do we continue to gather intelligence and move forward during this time while recognizing we have limited resources? Have you given that any thoughts as to how we could do that?
Well, you know, I don't have any solutions per se, but I do think about, you know, is there a way that we could potentially break up the AI project into phases where we're just going to lengthen it out over a longer time frame, so we have a little bit more time to, you know, go through the first phase, take a pause, see the results on, and then have some decision points, you know, about what the progress is made, so that we could be making smart financial decisions based on real life data and outcomes that the first phase of the project is producing before we move on into the second phase, for example.
I think that's a brilliant idea. And as I was thinking about the other concerns that you raised, they all seem to be focused on, the impact on our customers, our services, our talent, and our finances. And I think that what we could do is sort of a discovery phase to sort of look at your concerns as well as others that other people may have, and sort of look at what the possibilities are and whether or not these things would stop us in any way from moving forward. Would that be amenable to you?
I think that's great. I think we need to have, some input on this from major stakeholders, and also be part of that decision-making process on, making the initial investment for phase 1, phase 2, whatever that process looks like. So, yeah, I think that's a good next step to move forward with.
Okay. Thank you, Natalie. You did fabulous. And what I want to point out to you all is when I went into this, which Natalie did not know, is that a win for me was to get to the discovery phase, so that I wasn't looking to have the project funded. And that's when I left. Once I knew that she was already going towards where I wanted to go, I sort of then wrapped it up rather than go through all of the same what, how questions. But, recognize what's a win, get the buy-in, and get out. So that's what I want people to think about. Now, if it isn't going well, those questions can help you. And so we've talked about a little bit about why we want to avoid the word no. And I want to just demonstrate with Natalie the rationale as to what happens with the word no. In this case, I'm going to read the scenario, which is Debbie, the head of the product development team at an online company, comes in to speak to her legal representative. And Debbie will be played by Natalie. Natalie, go ahead.
Okay. Sheila, I have this really fabulous idea to generate more eyes on our entertainment and drive income. With COVID-19, all these parents are at home with their kids, trying to work remotely and at the same time help them in their learning process. What if we help those parents out by keeping their kids occupied? I heard about this person who can literally hypnotize kids online. We can tell the parents that they can sign up for the show for free. And then we could hypnotize the kids to act up until the parents sign up for the COVID-19 package, which is guaranteed to keep the kids occupied. By the way, the kids also receive hypnotic suggestions to just sit and watch shows all day. Isn't this a fabulous way to generate ratings?
No, are you crazy? This is illegal, immoral, unethical. We can't do this.
You never support the business. This is the last time I go to you.
So that's what happens with you say no. What you end up is you start saying no, you're pushing back on one person, I hope you can see me, and the other person starts pushing back here. And every communication breaks down, and you don't have that engagement and way to look into solutions. By asking a lot of the what, how questions, you may be able to have Natalie realize that probably hypnotizing children may not be the brand that the company would like. So the idea is, again, it's going to take you more time to ask and go through that question rather than just the no. But the other thing that you will gain is Natalie will come back and talk to you. She will come in with other solutions when she feels that you're partnering together. And the other thing that I had found in my experience, when there were some compliance people that I worked with who were very quick to say no, and what we found was it took twice as long to get to a decision because the business dug in than it would have if we sort of listened and talked to each other and worked through the issue together. So the problem with no is we just sort of went through this is it adds a lot of problems in terms of time, your credibility, your ability to influence gets shut down if people see you as a no person.
So Sheila, can I ask a question?
Yeah.
If Debbie were to come to you with that ridiculous idea, how would you have responded to keep her engaged and get her coming back with other ideas?
Okay, I would have talked about, wow, that's an interesting concept, and I could see how this could be attractive to a lot of parents and increase our revenue during this time where we are under a lot of financial pressure. But I'd like to sort of ask you some questions about some things about how you would mitigate some of the risks that I see.
There are no risks. This is like money in the bank.
What do you think the regulators are, what do you think the parents' organization's approach is going to be when they see that we have been hypnotizing children?
I mean, look, this is a weird time, so, I think this tool will attract parents who are just trying to survive. We're not trying to get parents who are into, the ideal parenting styles on Pinterest, and we're not trying to attract parents who are trying to win parent awards for the year. This is a really strange time, and parents are stressed out. I'm one of them. So I think this is a fabulous idea, just because we're not trying to attract parents who want to win Parent of the Year awards. We just want to attract parents who are just trying to get through the day.
So what I'm hearing from you is that this is a limited marketing objective that will only be used during this crisis.
I think so.
And you don't think that there's a possibility? How do you think parents will react when they discover that we've been hypnotizing their children, and that's why they are not acting up anymore?
That's a good point. I don't know. Maybe we could get a hypnotist on there and, talk to him about the benefits of hypnotism. I don't know. But, definitely something to think about. Maybe this isn't such a good idea after all.
Yeah, I was trying to think about what the disclosures would look like. And I hope the hypnotist doesn't have the children do anything dangerous.
Yeah, good point.
Okay, good. So, unfortunately, we didn't get to say, well, I did say to no to Natalie in the beginning. So, but we don't, now and then we do need to say no. You'll have someone like Natalie was trying to be, where she saw no risks in the beginning. Again, when you have to say no and it's going to come up, you want to establish that you understood the objectives and the impact on the business, that you've looked at the issue diligently. Use positive language and empathy. So again, I understand why this is important. I know where you're trying to go. Be neutral. Don't say to the person, are you out of your mind? You're trying to, hypnotize children. We are going to be the next Joe Camel. You want to be very neutral in your language. You want to make sure that you use plain language. This is whether you're a lawyer or a tech person. Understand your audience and put forth what is possible, what we may be able to do. And again, make sure that the dynamics are understood so you're saying no the right way and to the right people. And be firm and follow up with people afterwards and make sure that they understand why the decision had to be made. So the last thing I wanted to sort of hit on is some tailoring communications. We have multiple audiences, even within a corporation. How you communicate to one of your peers is very different than how you may communicate to the general counsel or the CEO or the board of directors. So understand what your audience needs. And for example, within a company, often the higher up the chain you go, the more bullet pointy and short the points need to be. You're less in the weeds. Use the language that your audience understands. It should not be legalese or techies if you are having those conversations with lay people. Communicate as your audience wants. Often people, I would ask for bullet points from my outside counsel and I would get a 6-page memo. It wasn't helpful to me, and I don't want to be charged for it. So in this world where you don't want to be writing off any time because the client's going to call you irate, make sure you're communicating the way that they want and they like. So again, if your person's a CFO of a law firm and you're trying to move them and they understand numbers and like numbers, make sure you have those numbers or those metrics. And make sure everything is clear and crisp. You know, as Mark Twain once said, if I had more time, I would write a shorter letter. Length does not necessarily translate well, especially right now when people, attention span is much less than it was. And for many of you who are at firms where you might be marketing some Corona information and you're sending around 40-page or 20-page memos, you may want to think about whether or not when you're talking to your clients, you understand their industry, their position, whether their employment, mergers or acquisitions, and provide them with some bullet points that actually applies to them. So you want to make sure that you're making this audience friendly. So our last demonstration is going to be a little bit different. This is going to be one dealing with an HR issue. So Sharon has unsuccessfully managed Leanne, Natalie, for several years. Leanne is unhappy with her career trajectory and wants to attend a leadership training program. I don't want to reward her because she hasn't improved her performance. Last time we talked, it got really bad and there were door slamming and all sorts of things going on. We're now having our follow-up conversation.
So, Sheila, I really want to revisit attending this leadership training. I think it's completely unfair that many of my peers get to go to this training and I don't. Then you complain that my work is not up to par with theirs. This is really your fault, you know, that you are so unhappy with my work. You don't give me the opportunities to grow.
I understand that this leadership training is important to you and that you believe that if you attend it, it would improve your performance. Do I understand your position correctly?
Yes.
Great. But I want to just dig in a little bit deeper because we've been talking about your performance in the past. What do you think have been my concerns about your performance? I want to make sure we're on the same page.
So I know that if I attended the training, I would be a better performer. But I think the concerns that you've had with my work are, if I recall correctly, one time there were some things that I missed on a strategy document. I think on 1 or 2 times I might have missed a deadline or two. And the other one that comes to mind is a time when you asked me to include something in a report for a client and I forgot to include it. So, but I know that this training would help get me on track and make sure that I don't repeat these mistakes.
So what do you think are the underlying causes, things that are going on when you've made these lapses in judgment?
I don't know. I guess that's a good question, but I do know that I'm sure this leadership course would fix it. Everyone who has gone to the course has really done well at the company.
Yeah. I understand that you believe that this leadership course would help you get to that next level, but I think we need to understand first what is causing your performance issues so that we can come up with a plan together to address them.
I just think that's so unfair. I mean, you never treat me like you treat other people.
I'm sorry that you feel that you're being treated unfairly, but I understand that you want to go to this course, but I'm not convinced that that's going to change the performance unless we understand the objectives. And I can't recommend you for this course until we find out what is causing these problems and that we address them. So are you willing to work with me to sort of try to figure out what could be causing these errors and develop a plan together to address them.
Yes, and if the issues get fixed, I can go to the leadership course.
If I see the improvement that we need, absolutely, you will be considered for the leadership course, because then you would be back on track. And no one wants to see that more than I. I'd love to see you engaged and operating the way that I know that you can.
Okay, I can do that.
Okay. All right, so in this demonstration, what we were trying to work on is the idea of empathy and asking those powerful questions and trying to get her to change her mind. Now, this is really important in a performance management conversation for the person who is displaying issues to understand what those issues are and to come, if possible, to the solutions herself. What happens when people come to the solutions themselves, they're more engaged and they own it. And when they own it, you are much more likely to see a change in behavior. I could have easily come in as a manager and say, you just got to be more careful, you got to proofread 19 more times, you got to make sure that you have a list of what needs to be included in reports. And that could have been the end of the conversation. But Natalie then is being told what to do. She's not engaged in the conversation. She's not thought about it as something that she owns and is responsible for. And also by teaching people how to self-evaluate, you're teaching them a skill that they can use in the future again without having to have a discussion necessarily with their manager. They can learn to do postmortems on things that have not gone well. So that is why in a performance management conversation, you want to use this technique if at all possible.
Sheila, we have a question comment here that I want to just make sure that we get to. So I think this probably goes back to the situation, the one where the COO was considering the AI project. So the comment was, you only get behind an idea if there's consensus agreement from management that it is an important problem that needs to be addressed. This person also points out that it has to be an urgent problem too. So when you're trying to influence people, urgency or creating urgency is always, something that's an effective tool. How do you suggest creating that urgency and in the context of asking powerful questions?
I actually think I'm going to go back to something else first. I think you need to creating that urgency, you first of all want to make sure that it is whatever urgency you are creating, it is an actual urgency. I have consulted with some companies in a different space where a lot of their IT spend, et cetera, was based on being able to show the return on investment. So they came up with these huge numbers as to what the downside was, and then they decided not to invest. So you have to make sure that what you're doing is actual and that there's a documented basis for it. And that but the urgency is lighting people's fire by talking to them about what we talked about before, the strategic reasons why this might make sense, what competitors are doing, the impact on customers, financials. You want to build what is considered a business case, and then to light that fire and use those powerful questions. Once you understand what your business case is, you go in and you have conversations with people where you dig in as to what their concerns may be or why they don't see it as an urgent matter. And then you need to try to convince them as an advocate that it is by asking powerful questions such as, I understand that you are resistant to doing this. How are we going to deal with the fact that 90% of our competitors are starting to go in this space? Or, I know that this is something different and bold, but, my research shows that we can decrease expenses by 50%. What other and I am all on board about reducing expenses because I know that's an initiative. What are the other things that we could do to gain that same reduction in expenses? And if they can't think of any, they may go to your side in a different way. So you need to think about how to position it based also on the person. Did that answer? Oh.
Yeah, and the person also says that there's some research out there that innovators who have been rejected come back with more ideas.
And I think that's true. You know, especially if you get that feedback as to what people think is the concerns, it allows you to go back and come back stronger.
Mm-hmm.
And, you know, I always say to people, raise the ideas again. And, you know, because as a leader, I always think what you should be saying is, oh, no, you should never say, oh, we've already looked at that. You should say, like, why does it make sense now? What has changed? And what's the impact? Because there are things that might not have made sense 2 or 3 years ago that you're like, oh, how did we, you know, today it absolutely is how we should be thinking. The world has changed, leadership changes, keep coming back and trying to demonstrate value.
Brilliant. Natalie, Sheila, was there anything else or
No,
end?
No, I just think that, again, I want to just emphasize today in this world, we are all being pulled in 13,000 directions. Thank you, Natalie, for having your son act as an example of that while we're trying to do 9 million different other things. Remember to be kind, empathetic to people. They will remember that more, and it will actually help you influence people. I was, a lot of people might not know this about me, most of you probably wouldn't, that 9/11, my husband was in the towers, and I met him. He went to Brooklyn, got our kids, and I met him on a street corner. And on the street corner was this lovely woman who I've been butting heads with for 9 million years. And as a result of being on that street corner, she came over and she talked to me. We have become fast friends. It changed by her and I reaching out on a human level during that time. It changed how we worked together. And it allowed both of us to move projects forward. So what I'm saying is, in all of this that we're doing moving forward, remember kindness and empathy, especially during this time. People remember that.
Yeah. I can't really add to that, Sheila. That's such a lovely and important way to finish this really valuable webinar, that really right now it is all about that connection and that empathy and that humanity. So thank you to everyone who's joined today and for finding the time to come online and listen to Sheila's insight. Thank you, Sheila and Natalie, for the wonderful role plays. I'd like to say, Natalie, we have had a lot of support for the hypnotizing idea.
Don't say that. Someone will now run with this.
There is support for that. But no, thank you for the role plays. That was really fun to bring it alive. Thank you, Sheila, as always, for your expert insight and for that ending there, which I think is very fitting. This is being recorded, so we will share it on the group for people that haven't been able to join. And again, thank you. It's wonderful to feel like we are all here listening to this together, and I wish you all well over these coming weeks. Our virtual doors are always open at She Breaks the Law if you want to get in touch with us at any time.
Thank you.
If you all have a good...
Wonderful. Thank you, Sheila. Amazing.
Bye.
Bye-bye.